There are two sacraments that I've received here in this cathedral that I'd love to tie into this celebration of Pentecost this weekend in our church as well. The first of the sacraments that I received here in this cathedral was on May 7th, 1995. There were two other things that happened that day that made my confirmation something that I hardly cared about. First of all, my brother Nathan was born that day. And then number two, Reggie Miller scored 8 points in 12 seconds against the Knicks. And then my confirmation happened that same day too. So even for me, I didn't really care. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't really care that much about confirmation when Archbishop Beekline was here and put the sacred chrism oil on my forehead and confirmed me as a Christian and a Catholic. Again, it was a distant third for me just that day. Fast forward to the spring of 2006. So about 11 years later, I'm a second-year seminarian, and I'm asked to teach confirmation to some local students, about 25 teenagers down in southern Indiana who are getting ready to get confirmed. And I still didn't really know too much about confirmation, even at that point as a seminarian. And I'm standing in front of 25 teenagers, and if you've ever done that, you know it's the most terrifying thing that's out there. And also I knew as a high school teacher, I remembered the lesson that I learned so many times. You have to prepare and be ready if you're going to stand in front of the wolves. So I was up there, and I didn't really know what I was talking about the first night on confirmation, so I went home to the seminary and I started studying. What is confirmation? How can I get these kids to care about their confirmation when I don't really care about mine? And I started studying and reading up about what confirmation is. And something started to happen. There was a slow realization that I began to realize that what the church says confirmation is that it's Pentecost for you and I. That's literally it. The celebration that we celebrate today that wraps up our Easter season. Jesus keeps telling them they all want him to stay, and they're pulling on his clothes, and he says, I have to go back to the Father so that the Spirit can come on you. And they're like, whatever, just stay. Jesus is saying, the reason I came is so that the Spirit can come. We should probably pay attention to that, right? We should listen to that. And so the church says that at confirmation, it's your own Pentecost. And what happens at Pentecost? This is what I love, right? This has become my favorite feast probably in the church. When I was ordained, which we'll talk about in a minute, the very first thing I bought with the money that I was given as gifts was a painting of Pentecost to hang in the rectory. It's an unbelievable feast. And the reason I love it is because, again, that connection to me, that it awakened in me what had happened. But look at the apostles and the followers of Christ. If you get the chance, if you've been paying attention to the readings throughout this Easter season, what we see happening every weekend over these Acts of the Apostles readings is we see cowards. We see people that are terrified. They're hiding behind locked doors. The Gospels and the Acts of the Apostles make it very clear. It says it about 4, 5, 6 different places. They're hiding behind locked doors. And very rightly so. They're afraid because the people that killed Jesus want to kill them. And that makes kind of sense if you're trying to stomp out a movement. You don't just go for the leader, you go for everybody. So they're hiding. And Jesus walks through those doors several occasions. But then what happens on Pentecost, the celebration today? The Holy Spirit comes on them, and they're all hiding behind a locked door. This is day 50 since Easter. So 50 days basically in hiding. The Holy Spirit comes on them at Pentecost, and they literally, like bullets out of a gun, run out of the room and start preaching from the roof and telling everybody you need to convert and become a follower of Jesus Christ. Now here's the even crazier part, and this is what got me really excited, and I was happy I finally had something good to tell the teenagers. But it hit me too. They don't just settle on Pentecost, they don't just settle for a speech to the crowd that's out there. They go to the home base of the people they'd been hiding from for essentially 50 days. They go to the temple. Right then and there. They go out, they give a quick speech to everybody, follow Jesus, we're not afraid anymore. It's like Kevin in Home Alone. Except Kevin runs back in. The apostles don't run back in. They go then, not only are we going to say, hey, we're open here, we're open for business, we're proud of this Jesus, we're not afraid anymore. They then go to the home base of the people that are trying to kill him. Read the speech sometime, I think it's the 3rd chapter of Acts of the Apostles. Read the speech that Peter gives. Peter the coward, Peter the guy that had been hiding for 50 days, Peter the guy that denied Jesus. He goes to the steps of the temple and he says, you killed Jesus. But that's okay because you acted in ignorance. Not a great thing to say to an army. Hey, you killed Jesus, I'm a witness, you probably want to kill me now. But hey, I'm also going to insult you a little bit and tell you that you acted in ignorance. These men at Pentecost are transformed, and women, radically. Like almost like 180 degrees. And they don't stop. They don't stop from that point on. Why? Because the Holy Spirit came on them, and they all go 100 miles an hour, proclaiming and preaching and working miracles and never hiding until they're all killed. They're all killed. Word to the wise, if you ever teach a confirmation class, that gets the teenagers to listen. They're like, wow. And it got me to listen. Side note, really quickly, I consider it now a failure if there's ever anyone who is a teenager or older at my parishes who has not been confirmed. We have a huge thing where in our culture, in our church in America, where a lot of people slip through the cracks and they never get confirmed. I just beg you to call your priest tomorrow if you've not been confirmed. And if he won't do anything about it, call me. I will help you get confirmed. You need to be confirmed. I needed to be confirmed. I just didn't figure it out for about 10 years. Fast forward a little bit to the second sacrament in this church, in this cathedral, from the same archbishop. Right there on that floor, right there in the middle, I laid down face first on June 6th, 2009, as the Litany of Saints were chanted over us. And then I came up the steps, and Archbishop Beekline put chrism now, not on my forehead this time. He put it on my hands and made me a priest. And that too has a connection to me for Pentecost. I want to fast forward after my ordination. I was assigned to Cardinal Ritter High School in St. Malachy in Brownsburg. Most of my time, the first couple of years, was at Ritter as a chaplain and a teacher. And I started doing something. I started putting my classes online because seniors that I taught were always skipping class. So then I said, well, okay, your classes are online and you can just write a 3-page summary of the class if you miss. And then they stopped missing. And so I did that. I just kind of started to figure that kind of stuff out. Pope Benedict had said a year earlier, my first year of priesthood, he said, priests, start using social media, blogs, put your homilies online, all that stuff. And I hated all that stuff when he said that, but I loved Pope Benedict, so I did it. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'll put my classes on there too and make the seniors. So that solved all kinds of problems. But what happened was, that second year of my priesthood, some of the classes that I taught on what the church teaches about homosexuality and why we're against same-sex marriage and that kind of thing went viral on non-Catholic blogs, like viral in a bad way, or good, depending on how you think about it. Lots of people heard the gospel that wouldn't have otherwise, but it got spread around, and so Cardinal Ritter's high school had to shut down their server because they got thousands and thousands of emails. And social media was bogged down. My blog, thousands and thousands of comments and all these kinds of things. But what happened with all of that was then the Catholic people started kind of rushing in and backing up and doing articles, priest gets persecuted for teaching Catholic teaching. And so then just from that point on, it just sort of, it blew up. And it's like ever since, it's just been like that kind of stuff has happened, and I've kind of been thrown out into the middle of all of that. Totally not something I was looking for. But it happened. And what happened, what I realized in the midst of all that, the first incident all the way through the 20th, online, with that whole social media stuff, preaching the gospel to the world that way, what I've realized is that we are to be bold like the disciples at Pentecost, and a lot of us don't because we're afraid, right? We're afraid of what's going to happen, just like the apostles pre-Pentecost. They were afraid. And what I found out from the first incident on is it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt nearly at least like you think it would. If you told me when I was getting confirmed and could have cared less here in 1995 that I would be the center of some even mildly large controversy, I would have run out the door and never come back. But what happens is the Holy Spirit gives us the courage if we just get out of the way. I spent about 10 years getting in the way, not even knowing I had been given the gift of the Holy Spirit, not really using it, not allowing it to happen. But if we get out of the way and we act with boldness and courage, what I've realized imperfectly is that the Holy Spirit will give you the strength that you need. There's this beautiful line from our second reading today that I think, for me, I have realized in my 10 years of priesthood, and I put it forward for you. Again, I'm not saying, hey, I'm the model and you should follow, but I'm just sharing my own personal experiences and testimony. In the second reading, the line is so true. The Spirit comes to the aid of our weaknesses. The Spirit comes to the aid of our weaknesses. I was the most cowardly person in May 7th, 1995, when I got confirmed. You couldn't have found a more cowardly person, probably. And I've realized over that, through the ordination, through the discovering of what it means, and through the getting thrown out into the midst of the controversies and so forth, the Spirit comes to the aid of our weaknesses. We see that in the apostles, and I can tell you from firsthand experience that the Spirit keeps its word. You're afraid maybe sometimes to say something at work, or to make the sign of the cross in public, or to talk to somebody, or to share something on social media that you know is going to get people to comment negatively to you. You're afraid to take a stand. What will happen? Don't worry, because the apostles were sitting there doing the same calculus for 50 days. What will happen to me? I'll be quiet. It's better to be alive, right? Maybe Jesus needs us to be here hiding and be quiet so that we can keep living. Surely that's what he wants. He doesn't surely want me to run out onto the porch of the temple. Don't worry if you're afraid, and I still have errors and mistakes all the time where I give in to fear too. We all do. But if you're thinking about that, trust in the Spirit. Stop doing the calculus about what's going to happen to you, and know that what we hear in the second reading is so true. The Spirit comes to the aid of our weakness. Allow the Spirit to come into your hearts. Allow the Spirit to come into your souls, and see the amazing things that happen as the Holy Spirit comes to the aid of your weaknesses and